Moving on now to Detroit Public Schools, the other story making news around the country this week. Teachers staged 2 days of sick-outs, closing up to 60 schools. They said they wanted to bring attention to poor building and classroom conditions. So Mayor Mike Duggan took a few school tours on Wednesday, and this video is from inside Spain Elementary School, and it really kind of tells the story. Cracks in the wall, mold, missing floor tiles, water damage in the ceiling. The mayor saw a dead mouse on one of his visits to another school. You know, no one wants their kids in conditions like this, not to mention the complaints of overcrowded classrooms that we're hearing time and time and again from teachers. But is a sick out the way to do it? Now, something has to happen for DPS and soon, but this could be complicating any kind of support for legislation for DPS that's supposed to be introduced this week, today and tomorrow. So, Stephen, let me start with you. Are the sick outs the way to do it for the teachers?
Well, I mean, no one's a fan of keeping kids out of school. At the same time, think of the frustration that these teachers have, and think of how long it's built up, and think of what other options have been taken from them with the anti-strike law. I'm not sure what else we wanted them to do. These are teachers who've been speaking out about this for a pretty long time, writing letters, showing people pictures, pointing out that the conditions are unacceptable. So I'm not a fan of the tactic, but I certainly understand what leads to it and the frustration that's behind it. At the same time, it's been effective this time because it got Mike Duggan to go out to those
in the schools on Wednesday.
He comes out, he says, look, this is not okay. We're not going to have this going on in the city. Then he goes and reaches out to legislative leaders and gets them to say, look, we're going to do what we're supposed to do. We're going to craft these bills and get them introduced so that we address this problem. So it seemed like it was effective this time. So again, I'm not a fan of the effect of that tactic on the kids in the system, but it seems to have worked this time, and I'm not sure they had another choice.
Did they have another choice, Nolan?
Well, I think it was a terrible tactic for the long term because I think it hurt them in the legislature, and the legislature is where these bills are going to have to pass in an election year, and these lawmakers are sitting up there, saying,
Yeah, but were the legislators fans anyway? I mean, they had already marched on Lansing a couple of times.
And you have Kevin Cotter saying in the first week of the year that this is not on my agenda.
Okay,
this
so
is not one of my legislative priorities. I mean, I'm not sure it helps that, but this was somebody who was not going to do it anyway. That's a problem for the governor to have been dealing with, which he's not, by reining that person in.
The biggest problem in the legislature now is that they don't have the Detroit delegation behind these bills. And the outstate legislatures, the other legislators, are not going to move if Detroit lawmakers aren't going to move. They're not going to move on a $700 million bailout. Yeah. Without
well, it's not a bailout. Let's be clear about that.
$700 million.
You're paying a $700 million bill that you own.
Debt relief plan, whatever you want to call it, it's $700 million that the legislature's got to approve.
The state's going to pay that anyway.
I agree, but I think it's going to end up in bankruptcy, not a legislative solution. If you have, but you have to have the Detroit lawmakers leading this. The folks from, Grand Rapids and other places don't have the same dog in the race. You've got to have Detroit lawmakers leading on it, and they don't seem to be willing to do that.
How about this? The governor should be the person who's leading on it, right? It's his idea. It's his plan.
Does it all come down to him, though? Doesn't he have to make sure, though, that he's got his coalition of Republican lawmakers that go along with him?
This is a state where. Let me ask you this: Who was the Speaker of the House in 1987?
Oh, now, Stephen, now you're going to hurt us here.
I mean, does it matter? The whole point is that in this state, it never matters who's the Speaker of the House. It matters who's the governor, right? Who's in charge?
So how did he do on the road bill? I mean, you just
he did terribly on the road bill.
I mean, I wouldn't expect him to be able to move this legislature on the school package any better than he did on the road package. He has not been very effective from day one in getting the legislature. Well,
that's the first term. He's got a different legislature.
He's got a different legislature. He's not done a very good job. They seem to have no allegiance to him. And that's the politics.
Now you have Mayor Duggan, who is in working this as well, and he said just recently he met with the governor yesterday, and they're talking about this, and so he's taking on a larger role. How important is it going to be for him? And now saying that the city is going to be inspecting the school buildings, how important is it going to be for him to get involved?
Well, it's essential. I mean, I think he could move the Detroit delegation if anybody could, but he's going to have to cooperate with the governor. They're going to have to come up with a plan they both agree on. And Duggan's been playing both sides of this thing for a long time.
He wants some things.
He absolutely does, and you know, he doesn't want to be tagged with it, but you know, he doesn't want to be out of the picture. He doesn't want to be in the picture. So I mean, he's been playing a little bit of games himself. I think the governor and the mayor absolutely have to be united on a single plan if it has any hope. You go in there where we are now, where the coalition has a plan and the governor has a plan and the mayor is sort of halfway between the two. We got no hope of getting a fix in time for these. These schools are going to be insolvent
Next couple
in
of weeks.
April.
Okay, so speaking about the coalition and a lot of these nonprofit groups that are very much invested in making sure DPS is successful, what about money, Stephen? What about some kind of philanthropic money coming from that community to go towards fixing anything? I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I think that's unlikely. I think number one, that community is pretty tapped out in Detroit from the grand bargain. In the first place, they are also already super invested, as you point out, in Detroit public schools. I mean, think of how much money is Skillman spending trying to make schools successful on a small scale. I'm not sure they have money to try to add more.
They put so much money in over the years and had no return on the investment.
I'm not sure that's true.
Detroit taxpayers have passed 2 bond issues totaling almost $3 billion over the last 20 years to fix these schools, and look at those conditions.
Yeah.
And there's a sense that no amount of money is going to fix this, because it's, I don't know what happened to the $3 billion. The schools should not look like that.
They shouldn't look like that, no.
so do you think now, with at least some kind of movement in Lansing this week, that we're going to start seeing some kind of legislation or proposed bills that starting today and tomorrow, but that this will get to the teachers, that someone's going to get to the teachers and say, look, we understand, we hear you, we're starting to make some movement, but we need you to stay in the classroom for these kids. We don't need 30,000, 40,000 kids at home on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
So the legislation is important for the long term, and it addresses the big picture in the schools. It doesn't address what the teachers are talking about, which is the conditions that they are teaching in right now. I think they will back off when you see somebody step in and say, we're going to fix this, right? We're going to get rid of the mold, and we're going to get rid of the mushrooms, and
but that's only
eradicate the mice. They want what is going to come out of these bills to some degree. There's some other things that they want too, and there's some things that they don't want to be doing. I mean, Detroit teachers have been absolutely battered for many years in this community as the sole responsibility, having the sole responsibility for the outcome of schools. And number one, that's not accurate. Number two, it's not fair. And number three, it's not the way that you improve schools. You can't improve schools by bashing or beating up on teachers. You've got to bring them into the process of reform, listen to what they want to do.
That's true,
Last
Steve,
word on this,
health
Nolan.
and safety is only part of their objections. They object to the emergency manager, they object to state involvement, they absolutely object to the governor's plan. So I don't think moving this legislation to implement the government's plan is going to end their discontent, may not end the sick outs.
All right, well, we'll have to wait and see as this continues to move forward.